Carnivore is this beautiful public experiment to demonstrate what a zero oxalate diet can do for people, including maybe make them sick. Hypocalcemia that can result in some cases could get you pretty close to a heart attack or stroke. So it's very serious.
Most people think spinach, almonds, and sweet potatoes are superfoods, but what if it's the food you're trying to heal with that's actually making you sicker? Today, I am joined by Sally K. Norton, Ivy League nutritionist and author of the book Toxic Superfoods. Her research on oxalates has helped thousands of people finally understand why healthy foods were sabotaging their health without them even realizing it. If you've ever wondered why you still struggle with inflammation, pain, migraines, anxiety, and many other chronic health issues, even when you're eating clean, this conversation might be the missing piece. Sally, thank you so much for joining me today. I have your book, Toxic Superfoods, right here. It is underlined, highlighted, tabbed. My mom has read it. We have taken notes and used this to a T. This is the first step that I took into feeling so much better. I'm now doing the carnivore diet, but this right here was my saving grace when I was so sick. I couldn't get out of bed. I used this book and it saved me. So thank you. So I'm really, really excited to talk to you today, pick your brain, and hear your story.
Oh, cool. Well, your story sounds pretty interesting too. So if I know how you got in bed, you look so great. Yeah. So it's like you can try really hard to do the right things and then it doesn't work and you find yourself sick. And that's where I was following this standard nutrition and public health advice that plant centric eating was the way to go for health and longevity. And that's very common now and considered mainstream. But back when I started it, 35 something years ago, it was a little bit fringy, but really on the rise. And this message has been around growing and growing. So more and more of us are naively picking up on that advice like I did. And while I was doing that, my health was a constant battle, constant, like serious things going on. And I didn't get a real breakthrough as to what the heck was going on till right before I turned 50. And that's when I realized, much to my shock, are you talking shock here? My attempts to eat healthy all these years have been giving me arthritis, fatigue, foot problems. And now I had this sleep problem when I discovered this where I couldn't sleep well. I was waking up 29 times an hour and my arthritis and stiffness was coming back and all this stuff was going on, and I had to figure this out, like how to do this diet. Like really all this arthritis was vegetables. So I really dove deep into understanding how to do it and why and what's going on and what's the mechanism, because my logical mind, my professional head had to understand this. And so I did a lot of research in the meantime, learned how to teach it because my inner public health mommy really felt a need to warn others to not crash, shipwreck on the shoals of this misinformation that is so prominent today. And, what became obvious was it's really lovely to work with people to learn from them is that even those who are in dire straits and really, really needed this information will resist it sometimes in the beginning. And they're going to have to continue to frustrate themselves until they just there's nothing else left. I guess I'll listen to Sally for a while. And then there's a chance if you really understand what you're doing, you can have that breakthrough that you're looking for. And the big lesson is that we are aggressively misinformed about the presence of plant toxins and their power to impact our health and longevity. And we don't realize that oxalates, which most people have never even heard of, are really quite dangerous to your health. And that it's not that hard to get around them. It's practically a free life hack to not hurt yourself on these plant chemicals, particularly oxalates. That's the tough one that I talk about. That's the linchpin in what we talked earlier, the hack, the best hack to get you right.
So, what are oxalates for people that have never heard of this before? What are they? Why are they in food? And what are they doing to our bodies that are harming us?
Well, plants in nature make oxalic acid, which is a tiny 2-carbon molecule and has 4 oxygens on it. It can be just spontaneously created in pollution. One of the major acids in acid rain is oxalic acid. Plants make oxalic acid for lots of reasons. It's a self-defense chemical. They can use it to manage calcium because calcium is so important, but you have to manage it carefully in biology. Soils are thick with calcium and plants sometimes have too much. So they build calcium crystals with oxalate. So most calcium crystals in the soil and even in your kidneys are made of oxalate. And plants use that calcium later for germinating seeds and so on. So a lot of seeds have it. It tends to be in the outer shell of seed-like things, bran, that kind of thing, where it's heavy in plants. Tree bark, trees put blocks of calcium oxalate in it. It's like shield, kind of like armor, so beetles can't bore through the tree bark. So cinnamon is high in calcium oxalate crystals. But foods like spinach and chocolate have a lot of oxalic acid. That's the stuff that gets into your bloodstream and starts messing with your electrolytes in your body. Because something that steals calcium can also steal magnesium, copper, you name it, iron, all kinds of electrolytes that your body needs, the cells need to properly function. And the oxalic acid initially starts upsetting electrolyte balance and causes damage to cell membranes and turns on inflammatory stress. So it can damage the circulating blood cells in your blood and the cells that line your vascular tissue. So it goes from your food into the vascular system where it starts inflaming the walls of the arteries and veins and the cells inside your blood, and it goes straight to your liver and stresses the liver out and requires glutathione. People think the liver removes toxins, but in the case of oxalate, it makes oxalates. There's a tiny little bit that your body makes every day. Most comes from the liver, something like 12 milligrams a day your liver will make. So it goes from your food to your liver, and it just stresses the liver out because the liver has to protect itself from it and adds more. So more than that goes from your liver up into your vascular system to your heart, and then your lungs, and then your heart. So it's getting pushed through the blood into tissues, because down in the capillary beds where you have exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide and nutrients, you push these toxins, especially oxalate. It's so little. Oxalic acid is an ion that dissolves in the fluid of the blood and can start grabbing calcium and other minerals. And then when they start hooking up, they form little crystals. And they tend to get pushed into tissues and stay in tissues where there's inflammation, infection, injury, tissues regenerating themselves. So new cells, old and dying cell bits are all end up being debris and victims where this stuff starts to stick around. And unfortunately, that means over time it can build up in your tissues and does. Ends up in the thyroid gland. Almost all of us have calcium oxalate crystals in our thyroid gland, eyes and brain tissue, bones and bone marrow. Of course, the kidneys, because the thing that makes up a kidney stone is oxalic acid and calcium. So that's calcium oxalate, but usually your doctor tells you have a calcium stone, but what they really mean is you have an oxalate stone. It wasn't the calcium that did it. The calcium was the innocent victim that let the oxalate form crystals that are really, really hard for the body to handle.
Before we jump back in, I just want to share something that I've been using lately and I have been genuinely loving. It is called SALTR, and it's become one of those small daily things that's actually made such a big difference for me. So SALTR is basically electrolytes made the right way. It's made with real Norwegian sea salt from the pristine waters of Norway. They're naturally rich in minerals and test lower in heavy metals than other brands. There's no weird hidden ingredients, which that alone was really important to me. What really sold me though is how gentle it is. It uses magnesium glycinate and potassium gluconate, which are gentler on the gut, and your body recognizes those forms of potassium and magnesium better, so it's using them and absorbing them more. And they even use citric acid made from things like dates and pomegranates, and not corn or other industrial byproducts, which to me is so important because I am very sensitive to everything, and I have no issue with these. They actually make me feel better than any other electrolyte brand that I've tried, so I am very happy about that. It's also lightly sweetened with stevia leaf extract, so it's a little gentler on the gut, and these flavors are honestly so good. My favorite right now is the tart lime. It's not too sweet or too sour. It is perfect. And my second favorite has to be the salted caramel coffee. It is delicious. I love it iced, and my husband said we cannot be a day without this, so I'll be ordering more soon. And they also have an unflavored option. So if you don't want any flavors or stevia or anything else, this is just the electrolytes. This is a great option for you. If you can't decide which to try, they have a variety pack, but it doesn't come with the coffee. So I highly recommend both of these. You seriously can't go wrong. Each of these sticks is 2 servings, and the coffee stick is 1 serving. So pour this into about 16 to 20 ounces of ice water or hot, and I will open one of these. And what I like to do is fill my giant tumbler for the day and just put a whole stick of one of these in there and sip on it throughout the day so I stay hydrated. If you want to try SALTR for yourself, click the link in the description below or use code LaurenJ at checkout. I hope you love it as much as I do. So when I first started, I was a wreck. I had a lot of anxiety. I was also up like 25 times a night, and I had like interstitial cystitis symptoms, kidney issues, kidney pain, joint pains, migraines. And within about 2 weeks of lessening my oxalate intake and following your book to a T and using the supplements and the tips that you used, I felt a lot better. I never noticed oxalate dumping. I noticed it a little bit more when I cut it out completely and did a strict carnivore diet, and that's when I had more of a full healing experience, but just the relief of symptoms was amazing when I started lessening my oxalates. What are some of the other symptoms that you see that people say they struggle with that they've seen healing with by following your guidance?
Well, I can tell you that your particular list of symptoms is a very good one, and I think we should deconstruct and look at that. I mean, anxiety. Many people have come to me and say they had decades of anxiety that nothing touched, and going low oxalate completely took away their anxiety. So you mentioned anxiety, you mentioned other neurotoxicity symptoms. Can't remember what they all were, but this is a great example of the nervous system having trouble with the inflammation and the effect of this electrolyte disturbance in nerve cells, in and around nerve cells, and disturbing the nervous system's ability to maintain itself. So when the brain's getting poisoned, it gets a little nervous. So you can kind of see how anxiety could be associated with toxicity. And in fact, it's not just that your brain's like, oh my gosh, I can't function, I'm toxic. But literally, it kind of turns nerves on. So because they're stuck and they can't work on can't control their electrolytes and do this polarization and depolarization pulsing they do down at like nanosecond level, they get stuck in this kind of on position and they tend to cause cramps and things like hiccups, right? And muscle pains like fibromyalgia knots. These can all be the nerves telling the muscles to like turn on or doing it in a random fluttery way. Also, the pacemaker is another nervous-like tissue that controls the beat of the heart. And when your high oxalate situation affects the calcium levels of blood and drops them, that's called hypocalcemia, and that can cause the heart to flutter too. So sometimes you have heart fluttering. It seems like a heart symptom. It's a little bit of a neurological, but either way, muscle cells and nerve cells require that control over those electrolytes. So you can see, oh yeah, that really is neurotoxic. But that was completely news to me. I didn't even know that hiccups were a neurotoxicity symptom, and I needed to know that because hiccups, that was one of my signs. At night, at bedtime, I get in bed and I would start hiccuping, really deep, painful hiccups that made me feel like I was going to break a rib. And also I would get belching, and belching is another neurotoxicity causing spastic muscles in the digestive tract. And you don't think of either belching or hiccups as neurotoxicity. You think anxiety. Some people don't even think of that as neurotoxicity. So they think of peripheral neuropathy, which is one of those things that can happen. Bell's palsy can be a cervical neuropathy where you lose your ability to like fully smile, or even affecting the swallowing mechanism. So sometimes nerve toxicity affects your ability to speak or to swallow and get buzzing in the ears. And you can get visual changes. Sometimes people get blurry vision and they can't see right, or they get other eye symptoms. So there's just like anxiety is neuro, and neuro is a whole department of toxicity. You mentioned like joint pain, right? So there's this inflammation that happens in the joint spaces in the synovial fluid, irritation to the cartilage caps on the end of the bones, irritation to the ligaments and tendons that hold the joints together. Oxalate is known as a joint space crystal, and sometimes the body will replace that and dissolve it out with uric acid, and you can get uric crystals following oxalate crystals. After they're gone, you might have gouty type uric acid crystals, but any kind of gout, arthritis, inflammation. I had so much swelling and weakness in my hands and other joints in my 20s. It was unbelievable. I mean, I had days I didn't have strength to unlock the door. And that's what was so disturbing me when I was 49, thinking, you mean all that suffering, all that pain and weakness? And I still have a little weakness in my hands because I've had a lifetime of hand pain and foot problems. I had bone problems. So here's another one that may not have been you. I had pain from a broken bone, a little tiny, tiny bone in the front of my left foot that became pain in both feet, tight tendons around that big joint, and little tiny crack in a bone that really was a weak bone problem and a lack of healing and a lack of connective tissue strength. So I continued to have foot pain problems for 30 years, and then it went away on a low oxalate diet. And my best explanation for that is that all the tendons that were holding the arch and the shape of the foot and the other ligaments and connective tissue that were giving the foot its shape were a little bit laxity and weren't strong enough because of the oxalate poisoning. And so there was pain. This is like there was too much spreading of the foot with stepping on it. So it caused pain. Now I don't have that. I can run on asphalt, rough, nasty asphalt and bare feet. And I'm okay now. So there's the bone symptoms. There's blood cell symptoms, low white blood counts, anemia. Those can be problems because the oxalate's getting into the bone marrow and it's also directly killing blood cells in the bloodstream itself. There's those urinary tract symptoms. You mentioned interstitial cystitis, which is bladder pain. So bladder pain means the nerves are getting irritated. Now it could be that the mechanisms we're saying earlier with the brain, because that's a kind of could be like a neuropathy. But I think more the better explanation for that nerve pain in the bladder is that the cells that are lining the bladder are not able to produce their normal coating and are not in good shape. So they're inflamed, and so they're not protecting the cells from the toxins in the urine. And of course, what is a major toxin that you're peeing out in your urine on a high oxalate diet? Oxalate, right? So like you're peeing out oxalic acid, which is very irritating to the cells, and you're peeing out calcium oxalate crystals. And if you ever get cloudy urine, did you ever get cloudy urine, Lauren?
I did once in a while, especially when I was detoxing, for those first few weeks and following your symptoms. It wasn't always painful. Sometimes I would have some worse days than others, but for the most part, I was getting better, but I did see cloudiness.
Yeah, so that cloudiness is light bouncing off the little crystals in your urine. So the cloudier it is, the more crystally it is. They call that crystalluria. I had cloudy urine most of the time from the time I was a teenager on up until I went on this diet. And then I had pretty good cloudy urine most of the time for the first 5 years on the diet. It's so much oxalate to unload. Now I don't see it at all, hardly ever. So cloudy urine, that bladder pain, you were getting up a lot at night. Was that because your bladder couldn't handle it?
Yeah, it was mostly from bladder pain. Sometimes I just kept waking up and I was like, well, I'll just go to the bathroom just in case because I'll probably have to get up soon anyways to do that. But yeah, it
Wow.
was really awful.
Does it make a person grumpy to not be able to sleep?
Yes, and I had a toddler at the time and
Oh, no.
it was very difficult.
It is very difficult, and I don't think until you live it, you realize how difficult it can be. But that whole urinary tract thing, if you're getting up for nighttime urination, you probably have an oxalate problem. If you're running to the bathroom feeling urgency and yet you're only peeing out like a tablespoon, you probably have toxic urine. You probably have some control issues with inflammation affecting the sphincter around the bladder, and that's not really closing competently. So you can also get leaky bladder. But either way, all those urinary symptoms can be quite disabling, and they're often, I would say, an early sign. If you're, well, not even an early sign. If you got heavy, cloudy, crystally urine, you got too much oxalates coming out of your system. So we talked about the nervous system, the joints and connective space. So any kind of bursitis, tendonitis, ouchie oochies, tennis elbow, golf elbow, neck pain is a common one in the literature. Where that's associated with oxalate poisoning, frozen shoulder, tooth pain, sinus infections, stuff with your ears, needing glasses for no apparent reason, or having trouble with night vision, or getting early cataracts. Those can all be signs of oxalate poisoning. And then there's indigestion type things, reflux, bloating, trouble with your digestion. And of course, we talked anxiety, but other mood issues where you periodically lose enthusiasm for things, you don't feel excited about life, you don't feel motivated, you feel anxious, depressed, or, you get attacks of grumpiness where you're just unreasonably short with people for no apparent reason, or your brain starts being ultra negative, sort of Eeyore brain, and your brain is like, yeah, you suck, you're going to have to have your elbow cut off, whatever, some random thoughts that could be oxalates messing with your brain. It's fascinating.
It really is. And A lot of people deal with so many of these issues every day, so it's worth just trying, lowering your oxalate intake and just seeing if you feel a difference. Because for me, I felt a difference pretty quickly. And I mean, that's priceless. That just feeling better in itself is the best gift you can give yourself. So it's silly to think that I'm never going to do that. It's not affecting me. Just try it. It's free, like we were just talking about earlier. But why do you think some people feel fine when they're eating high oxalate foods and others have a serious issue with it? Is it gut health? Is it something else that is affecting them?
Yeah, I wish we had a really good answer to this. And there's lots of different angles to this. One of them is that there's this huge variation on how much it takes of a poison to actually kill you in an abrupt kind of quick way rather than the slow death that we've been living. So that range is something like 3 grams to 15 grams. So if I needed to murder you today, how much oxalic acid should I give you? Is it going to be 3 or 15 grams? 3 grams, it's about, 1 gram is about one spinach smoothie. So you can think of it as how many spinach smoothies do I have to force down your throat to kill you today? And some people who are quite ill because they have leaky gut or they have urinary tract issues or kidney issues where they're not removing oxalate rapidly enough, the immediate, like you will die in the next couple days, toxicity is going to vary a lot, and so those folks, so if you've already got some issue there, but I think one of the things that sets us up for being more vulnerable to having symptoms show up in our lives is early exposure in fetal development, in breast milk, and in early childhood diets, especially if it leads to the need for antibiotics in childhood. It seems like a lot of us who are really symptomatic tended to have some weird stuff in childhood going on, tended to be given antibiotics early on. And I think that the whole system had been struggling earlier in life.
That makes a lot of sense. I was talking to someone that will also be on this podcast recently, and she was saying that she had been on antibiotics. I think she said every month for years. And
Mm.
I personally was on it. I think I had strep a few times in a row as a kid. And, early 90s antibiotics weren't feared at all. And it was just kind of a cure all for everything. And like my husband, he can eat things that are very high in oxalates and be totally fine. Well, he wasn't sick as a kid, hardly ever. And he's probably one of the healthiest people I know. And yeah, I mean, we're all different. We're just the luck of the draw that this has happened to us.
Well, in some ways, it would be a gift to get a kidney stone early on because it would at least tell you that your body's struggling with it. The body can heroically put up with things until suddenly it can't. And you can be severely poisoned with oxalates. We see this in the literature because there's a genetic version of this disease that we call primary, which kind of means it's genetic. Hyperoxaluria, hyper means high. Oxaluria means oxalates in the urine. So you could have high oxalates coming out of your body in the urine and not have any symptoms. And to the point of this is in this case where it's genetic, the liver has one of like 250 or 300 potential mutations. And the liver, which normally in a healthy person produces a very small amount, is producing so much that you're quite toxic with it and are in the past, up until about 3 years ago, you were destined to an early death. Often people, if they're infants, they'll die within a year or two of diagnosis. If they're adults, when they get diagnosed, they're within 5 to 7 years of death when they get diagnosed. Now, those people have been sick for a while or had this in their system without symptoms. And then suddenly, in a couple cases in the literature, somebody gave birth and all of a sudden they had primary hyperoxaluria, had an accident, had surgery. So something stressful broke the body's coping mechanism. And suddenly that underlying disease and toxicity was revealed. So with most diseases, hypertension, cancer, heart disease, you have very little symptoms until you really getting towards a fourth stage, kind of late stage condition. So just because you can get away with it now doesn't mean that it isn't harming you.
Do you think that everyone should be taking oxalates out of their diet, that it's harmful for every single person?
The only two ways you can really make someone sick is to poison them or make them nutrient deficient. And eating oxalates does both. It reduces your calcium and other nutrients, A lot of minerals you can become secretly deficient in minerals. You can also start to become deficient in certain B vitamins because of excess processing required by the body of all this toxic oxalate. And the body can only just sort of move it around. So wherever it goes, you're causing stress. So wherever you're overusing your body, getting infections, inflammation, when you're sick, you are setting yourself up for a difficulty to recover or setting yourself up for scar tissue that won't heal. If you're going to go into surgery, oxalates will collect wherever you get injured in the surgery process and will cause a fibrotic scar that will last until you get oxalates out of your system. So if you don't want to be deficient and toxic, you want to take away a toxin that makes you toxic and deficient. So this should be a standard prevention policy that we don't know who dies at the 3-gram level or the 15-gram level. So it should be all of us should be eating what we're designed to handle. And what we're designed to handle seems to be about 150 milligrams of oxalate a day. We're built to handle 150 if we have a good gut function and good kidney function. If you if you have leaky gut because of a lot of antibiotics or too many lectins or other plant chemicals messing with your gut inflammation levels, if you have renal problems, then maybe you can't even handle 150. Maybe it's more like 90 or 100 for you that's you can process without it backing up in your tissues. So the thing is, it's just that we have not truly recognize that nowadays we're not eating 100 milligrams a day or 200 milligrams a day because we have peanut butter, potatoes, and chocolate on most days. Some people also have sweet potatoes, the dark leafy greens, whole grain breads, whole grain pastas, that bran, that's got oxalate in it. Let's see, things modern like gluten-free diets that use a lot of potato flour, potatoes generally. You've got turmeric being very popular. Turmeric is quite high in oxalate, the whole turmeric root, but curcumin is not, which is another story. But the thing is, it's pretty hard to stay within the natural bounds of maybe 200 milligrams a day. Nowadays, I think it's more common to be eating 600 milligrams. And if you're into really healthy eating, it's not that unusual to be eating 1,000. That is 8 times what you can handle every day. That's going to lead to aging. You think aging is normal. You think having problems is normal. Needing deep pens in your older age is okay. Having to have a walker, getting, falling apart, having joint problems. Maybe that's not normal.
Now, so many people have said that they have healed their body with the carnivore diet, and that's a complete removal of oxalates. Do you think that is the main reason why so many people are seeing healing with carnivore is mostly because oxalates are completely out of their diet?
I do think that oxalates and maybe some other plant chemicals too that make oxalates worse because saponins and lectins can really contribute to leaky gut and contribute to oxalate hyperabsorption, where too much is leaving your food and getting into your bloodstream. I do sincerely believe that at least 80% of the benefits of carnivore is the removal of oxalate. In fact, carnivore is this beautiful public experiment, a science experiment no one could probably do in a university to demonstrate what a zero oxalate diet can do for people, including maybe make them sick.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I've seen a lot of comments come through on this channel saying that people are afraid of oxalate dumping symptoms, and that's why they don't want to start carnivore specifically. But in the case of oxalate dumping symptoms, what are your best tips to help mitigate those and help them to kind of get over that hump so they can start feeling better?
Right. So this term of dumping is referring to clearance of oxalate from tissues like your eyes, your bone marrow, your joints, whatever, your jaw, your teeth, in a kind of systemic way that puts too much oxalic acid back in the bloodstream and turns on inflammation so high that you feel quite terrible. This clearing crises that can occur, and that can literally mess up your electrolytes and give you arrhythmias and even make you feel like you're having a heart attack or stroke. Literally, the hypocalcemia that can result in some cases could get you pretty close to a heart attack or stroke. So it's very serious. You don't want to be dumping oxalic acid, especially in a situation of high inflammation, because it takes the immune system to go after these crystals and tissues, attack them. It has to try to eat them and bring in more inflammation, which opens up your capillary beds and tissues swell and get hot. And the immune cells are having trouble, so they start spewing um, collagenase to break up the crystals and the little capsules they're wrapped in, because most of them are wrapped in old DNA and dead cells and protein material. So you use an enzyme to break up the protein to help break up the crystal, and then they'll shoot acid at it to kind of dissolve the crystals. And that acid and enzyme bombing hurts the local tissues. And that's none of that feels good. So you get swelling, you get mood changes, you get who knows? It's so that's dangerous. So you want to moderate that. So what's happening there? High inflammation is producing acidity. So we want to alkalize with lemon juice, which turns to bicarbonate. You can use baking soda either separately or together. You can mix a little bit of baking soda with lemon juice, let it fizz, add a little water, take that down, take some calcium. Calcium's the binder of oxalate. It helps draw oxalate to the colon and help you excrete it through the feces. It helps calm down the system. It supports the kidneys. So taking calcium is important because the like I said before, the low calcium levels in the blood can be dangerous. So if there's always calcium in the stomach, small and large intestines, and the body can go find calcium and immediately rectify that as it's losing calcium from the blood, you can provide it in a routine use of calcium supplements and high calcium foods like cheese and other dairy products to help mitigate these symptoms. So alkalizing, taking calcium, and trying to do something to lower inflammation, things like sauna, even a cold shower, cold bath, and being sure to be getting keep your circadian rhythms nice. But the key thing, run and juice a lemon, take some calcium, get plenty of water, and get plenty of minerals. So I like to see people using potassium, magnesium, and calcium, usually as supplements, and maybe taking some trace minerals. All of that is compensating for this loss of oxalate also means a loss of these minerals. So you're going to continue to waste minerals and you keep supplying them, you can counter that. So yeah, it's simple tools, calcium, lemon juice, minerals.
And I love that all these tools are so easily accessible and so cheap because sometimes you see these people that, are selling books sell very expensive supplements and you just want to make people feel better and I love that about you and your book and I mean I filled a whole notebook when I was reading your book and I was, highlighting and everything and the lemon juice shots probably were the thing that worked the best for me especially when it helped a lot with the urinary issues especially and the baking soda. Yeah, I'm just really appreciative of that.
Well, you sound like you're an excellent student. And when your bladder is driving you crazy, you have good reason to be. Unfortunately, people have to be really motivated to bother to learn to juice a lemon. It's too bad because it's pretty clear that 3 lemons or about a half a cup of lemon juice can dissolve kidney stones. And so you're also dissolving those crystals that are irritating your bladder and being able to sleep better because you're not peeing out so many crystals. It's more dissolved. Getting magnesium helps keep the oxalate in solution too. So it's more, uh, it's not particulate material. And going up to that nanocrystal and microcrystal level with the crystals of oxalate is taking it to another level on sort of multiple ways of it being damaging to those bladder cells. But once you calm that down and you get better urine coming through the bladder can start recovering, start repairing itself, and the nerves in the bladder get a break. And your brain is not so aroused, and you can actually sleep for a change. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I'm very grateful to you. But something I'm excited about is you're releasing a new cookbook. It's Sally's recipe collection, right?
Right, I've had this recipe collection available on my website only since 2000, but I've long wanted to do a second edition that's more beautifully formatted, has a few more recipes, is more cleaned up and universal, and it's print on demand because the PDF is not the greatest thing for a cookbook. So it's going to be with the same spiral bound, the same size as the data companion, really nice, pretty cover, few more recipes, more explanation, beautifully laid out, and we're going to have that available hopefully mid-December. I have some other projects for there are also recipe related projects I'm working on at the same time. But certainly by the beginning of 2026, you're going to be able to get the printed cookbook with over 200 recipes. And it's just important to know what to do with the lower oxalate foods because you can have all kinds of salads, all kinds of vegetables. If you're into that kind of thing, or if you're trying to blend at holidays and so on, you can have low oxalate foods that look like the higher oxalate version. So instead of mashed potatoes, you might try mashed cauliflower, mashed turnips, mashed rutabaga, mashed celery root, combinations of them. There's ways of doing that that comes out with a very similar texture. I've had many lifelong potato eaters who like mashed potatoes say they like the low oxalate version better. So it's not necessarily a step down or a step away, it's a step towards more options.
Yeah, I loved mashed I think it was turnips that I tried, and I made turnip fries, and it was really good, and I changing up our diet was kind of fun, and we'd go to the grocery store and find the alternative, the swaps that you did, we did romaine lettuce instead of the dark leafy greens, and I had a lot of fun trying your swaps in toxic superfoods, and then I had your, what was it? The spiral bound book that you were showing with all of the lists of what's high, what's low, what's medium, and so that was really, really helpful.
Oh, good. You had the
Yeah.
data companion then.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think my mom has it right now, though.
Well, there's a slightly reorganized version that came out in fall of 2025 that's slightly better, but it's really the same book, and I continue to keep this up to date. So, check back if you ever need a new one, but the data hasn't changed very much. I just want to make sure that everything is perfect, and when we do see some new data, we try to update that.
I
So,
love it.
and I only have the stuff that I produce is sold on my website. My main book, Toxic Superfoods, is sold through any book outlet such as Amazon and others. When you get online, though, there's lots of other things out there that claims to be Dr. Norton and this and that. None of that is mine. Some of it's just AI bots and it's really not worth your time. And I can't tell you which ones are good and which ones are bad necessarily. But if it says it has something to do with me, it probably doesn't if it's not from my website. It's either this out there in the big world or in the tiny world of my website. That's it. So just to warn people to not waste too much time or money buying fraudulent materials, which is so prevalent today. People do not realize how much junk is out there on Amazon.
This is very true. But I'm so excited about your cookbook. I'm gonna grab it and give it as Christmas gift. So,
Oh,
yes.
cool. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
but
that's a great idea because it's nice to just say, oh, okay, here's some stuff I can try. Yeah.
yeah, it's worth it, and especially for someone that that might have a difficult time swapping or transitioning from their higher oxalate diet. It's just like, "Here, I'm gonna make it so easy for you. Here's this cookbook, and I hope you feel better."
Yeah. Tools. That's the idea is give people enough knowledge so they're incentivized to try to make a few changes and changes that can stick. So, any of you guys out there who are trying to help someone else discover that low oxalate eating is very customizable, you can go all the way to full carnivore, which most people need as a little stage, not necessarily can maintain it as a lifestyle for all kinds of reasons. But the carnivore thing is telling us a lot about the fact that humans do quite well on animal foods and need animal protein and need animal fats. We don't need to be afraid of them. But if you want to stay very plant centric in your diet, you can still do that and have the low oxalate diet. And then we can find a way to get along at the dinner table. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, I love that advice. But Sally, thank you so much for joining me today. I absolutely love this conversation and finally getting to talk to you, someone that helped me feel better. I'm just so grateful that you came to talk to me today. And I hope this helps a lot of people that are feeling overwhelmed and don't really know where to start and just want to start feeling better. These pieces of advice, I think, are going to be just gold for them. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Friends, if this conversation opened your eyes or connected a few dots in your own health journey, click the like button and share it with someone you think might need to hear it too. And if you want more conversations like this, ones that challenge the mainstream and actually get you real results, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.